Back and then come back.
Good evening, Game Changers. This is episode 38. This is kind of like the last episode before our small vacation. We are delighted and honored to welcome Matt Donnelly as our guest, and we are so eager to learn about his wonderful journey. We extend our gratitude to all of you once again for tuning in and being part of the conversation. We express deep appreciation for the backing of Evan, Iggy, JC, and the whole TSA crew who have provided us with this platform to interact with remarkable individuals in our community. Join us as we delve into the life and narrative of our guests, getting to know their innermost secret experiences in fantasy football and much, much more. The Game Changer is not your ordinary show anymore. It has transformed us into a beloved community, and we are thrilled to share this journey with all our viewers. Wendi, how are you tonight?
Oh my goodness, I'm great, Carla. I am great. But you know what? I have to mention something real quick before we get started. We are so proud of you, Carla, for your recent graduation. And I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but Ostaza, is that how you say that?
Yes.
Okay, can you explain that real quick? I'm so proud of you and I want to know more about it.
So Ustaza, it means professor in my country. It's Ustaza Hazam. So that's how we say Professor Hazam. And
all right.
My students say, tell me Ustaza Hazam. And that's why Ustaza in the cake was part of it.
So, I love it. Well, congratulations. I know how hard you worked, and I wanted to make sure that everybody knows and that we are so proud of you. So my quick announcement, I do have a quick one before we get started again. I have been invited by Bob Lung himself to play in the Queen's Classic this year at the Expo.
Oh, yes. Go Wendi.
I almost fell out of my chair, okay, when I got a DM from Bob Lung. And I said yes really fast before he could see like, oh, this was the wrong person. I didn't mean to ask her. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to say yes. Hell yeah, I'm saying yes. So that being said, I'm so honored and thrilled. I can't wait for the expo. I know we're going to be talking about that later, but I have a spot. I had joined the charity league for the Joe Thomas on draft night out. I've already paid for the spot. I'd like to give it to someone because those two things overlap. So if there's anybody out there that would like that spot, because I know that division is full, DM me after the show and I'll get you hooked up with Seth over at In Between. So thank you.
So nice.
Yeah. And then also we do have our break coming up. Oh, thank God. I'm sorry. I love you all. I love every single one of you, everyone in the chat, love everybody, but we need some time off. So we're going to take off until July 17th. So this is our last show before our break. We'll come back on July 17th. We'll have draft stuff going on because everybody's going to already been, well, some of them will already have done the Scott Fishbowl draft, so we can talk about that. So everyone, please come back. Don't forget about us. We'll be popping in, making sure you're all coming back to see us. But this will be the last episode until July 17th. So Carla, take it away.
Wendi, we are unforgettable. That's
I hope so.
So Matt Donnelly, husband, dad, known for his unique mustache, the creator of Viper Network on YouTube and co-host of the Vipercast podcast. Donnelly is a proud FSWA member and fantasy analyst with Fantasy Point and Rotoballer. His work is also features on BetSperts, and he is recognized as an expert ranker by FantasyPros, in which he was the second most accurate ranker back in 2021. Donnelly started his with a website and podcast and has since branched out into other media streams, such as the Viper Network, YouTube channel, and radio. You can catch him occasionally making radio guest appearance on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Through the Vipercast Behind the Grind series, Donnelly has sat down with some of the best minds in fantasy football, with current and former NFL players. Donnelly is self-proclaimed jack of all trades, with a unique understanding of all fantasy football formats, which has led to his works publication in multiple magazines, including the ITP Guys Draft Guides, Fantasy Football Pro Forecast, and Fantasy Football Diehards. Like most Canadians, when Matt isn't creating fantasy football content, he is at the hockey rink, either coaching his kids or driving the Zamboni. Hi, Matt, and welcome to tonight's show.
Hello, Carla. Hello, Wendi. How are you guys doing today? Are you guys ready for this one? Like,
I'm not
Ostasa!
sure.
This is like a celebrating type of word, doesn't it? Ostasa!
Oh, totally.
I probably said it wrong.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I want to get out the Uzo and break glasses and do all that stuff. But Matt, we're so glad that you're here. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
I'm glad to be here. I know Carla's reached out a couple times and we kind of pushed the dates around to try to make things work. I think we're slowing down. You know, you mentioned you're going on holidays and kind of taking the show off for a couple weeks there. I think I'm slowing down right now. I think we're hitting that slow peak. Ball hockey's got about a week left. Spring hockey's done. My daughter just finished softball. She's got an awards banquet here tonight, I believe. Kids are in swimming lessons for the rest of this week. And then I think we're done. After this weekend, my son goes up to a spring basketball tournament. But I think that's it until summer hockey starts.
Summer hockey. Oh, I want to hear about hockey because I'm a big hockey fan, but I'm a Blackhawks fan, so send prayers. You know, it's really, really bad this year. But how many kids do you have, Matt?
Can
you count them?
Well, okay, so anyone who knows me knows we had Peter Schrager on the show a while ago, and he basically crowned me the Philip Rivers of the North, so to speak.
Yes.
And currently have 12 children under our care. My 5 older daughters, they've kind of all moved on and moved out, but we've got my younger 3 children plus 4 foster kids here right now. And all the foster kids are 4 and under. So we've got that. And then there's no time because, believe it or not, I'm like a grandfather of 6 right now as well. So if there's kids coming in, I always joke, I'm like, if one of my children gets wet, like 4 more spawn up somehow, some way. It's like gremlins here.
Don't feed them after midnight.
Do not do that. Nope.
Matt, why adopting?
So that's my wife. So my wife, God bless her and everything. I grew up in a family. It was just me and my sister, my mom, and my dad. Small family. Although at the dinner table, you'd think I grew up with 5 or 6 other brothers because there's no talking. It's straight eating for me. My wife, on the other hand, God bless her. God bless her parents. She grew up in this whole system. Her parents fostered and adopted so many. She's got so many children, like siblings right now because of fostering and adopting. In fact, her youngest sister is like 10 years younger than our oldest daughter. So
oh my God.
My oldest daughter's auntie is like 10 years younger. Like our family tree, it's completely branched, like sagging to one side here. But we kind of came by it honestly. Like I got together with my wife when we were a little bit younger there. She was already fostering children, and it just was a natural thing for me to get into it. And then obviously, once you foster for so long, you have these kids in your care for a certain period of time, you just can't give them up. You really can't. So now it's a little bit different because we've done this for 17, 18 years now. I think we've had about 120 children plus come through our home over that period of time. And obviously, we haven't adopted all of them. But at the same time, some of the ones that we had for a little bit longer, we chose to go that route where we adopted, and they are part of our family, our extended family. And even the children who've moved out, some of them still do keep in touch with us. So it's
that's
quite
cool. That was going to be my question. That's so awesome.
100, how much? 100.
I think we were about 120 last time we kind of did the head count there over 17, 18 years of it.
Oh my God, I have goosebumps. That's amazing. Taking care
and again,
like that much is just amazing.
That is all my wife, 100% my wife.
Giving
I'm just here to provide that father type figure.
You're her support system though. That's really cool too.
Yeah, I'm just the taxi. I just drive them around wherever they need to go. She takes care of all the other needs that they have.
Well, how
If
long
you're
have you
not
been married?
supporting, yeah.
Basically about the same period of time there, about 17 years. So yeah, as soon as we got together, it was right into fostering. So I came from basically being single. My sobriety just basically started at that point, and I kind of got into. I met my wife, fell in love right away. Found out she was fostering, had all these extra kids, which would normally scare someone away. And for some reason, I wasn't scared. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know what it says about me personally, but yeah, if I wanted to be with her, this came with the whole package, and we've been doing it ever since.
That is
What advice would
crazy.
you give other people that they want to adopt kids?
Oh
What kind
man,
of
there's
advice?
so many people. I know a few people in our industry alone. I've kind of reached out to, and I've seen things weren't quite going the way they wanted to. I know the Canadian system's a lot different than the American system.
It's hard.
Here
It's
it
hard.
is. It really is. I mean, I don't know much about the American system per se, but it sounds like it's really hit or miss. Really, you could have your hopes up. You can have a child looking like they're going to come into your family, and then nothing. Here, if you foster a child for a period of time, and they decide to go PGO, where the government says, you know what, we cannot place this one with their parents or with their family or any close relationship. You, as the current caregiver, have that first right to bring them and keep them in your home. So it's a little bit different here, as what I've understanding goes down in the States. So for us, that's just something that's always been the case for us.
So you
And if you look at,
foster, you foster, and then you will adopt if need be, or if it works out like that.
yeah, I mean, it's really about finding the right fit too, right? I mean, you got to try with the bio children and everything else that kind of comes with that. So it's kind of finding that right balance and how they all get along and how it fits in the family, trying to basically put together your own fantasy football roster, so to speak, right? You have to find the right pieces to kind of work together there. But like I said, the wife does a fantastic job of putting that all together, and I do a pretty good job of not screwing it up.
You know what you and your wife do are
Yes.
way more important than any of this fantasy football stuff. That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I had no idea. Game changer.
Yes.
Absolutely.
How can we as a community, Matt, better support and raise awareness about adoption?
You know, again, it's tough for me to say between borders here what that looks like down in the States, because I know there's so many children that are looking for that fit, that home. And the thing is, we've got to understand that they've come from places that we've probably never even seen in our nightmares, right? There's been some pretty broken homes. And, you know, a lot of us have come from broken homes too. And it's been a little bit different. But I know some of these kids who've come into our care, they've seen some things. They've lived some things that you wish upon nobody. And I know even for myself, I'm a big individual. I kind of come across as intimidating, and I got a deep voice. So for me, I have to understand I got to back that off a little bit and try not to be myself so much, try not to be so intimidating. So when you're kind of in one of those situations, it basically comes up, don't be a jackass out there. You don't know what someone else is going through. You don't know what their circumstance happens to be. So just try and be nice to one another, especially the kids out there, because you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. And just trying to raise awareness is just supporting those causes in your neighborhoods. I mean, I know up here, they're always looking, and that's not necessarily a good thing, that they're always looking for foster homes, because that means there's children who are not getting a good experience wherever that happens to be. So I would suggest anyone who's got a kind heart or who's got some time, or it's not for everybody. It really isn't, because there are going to be struggles. It is going to challenge you. It's going to challenge your patience. It's going to challenge every bit of you, especially if you've never had kids before. Now, all of a sudden you have kids that don't necessarily have that learned the proper tools and techniques. They've had to cope other ways. So they're not quite wired the same way as maybe some other children have, because of what they've seen, what their circumstances have had to be. So that will challenge you. But I would say once you get through it, it is quite the rewarding process when it's all said and done, but it's not going to be easy. And you just have to kind of keep that open mind. You got to realize it's not always about you. It's about the kids at the end of the day.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, that was great. Thank you for sure. Well, I mean, as long as we're talking about family, I do have some questions. Like, how does your wife feel, when you're like, hey, I got to go do podcasts, I got to write articles, for fantasy football? Like when you first told her you were going to do this, how did she support you and how did she feel?
At first, it was pretty easy because I don't think either of us really thought it was going to be what it turned out to be. I think we thought it was going to be a cute little hobby at first, and I know she wasn't going to be able to stop me. We talked about the Scott Fishbowl there a little bit off the air. That's basically how this journey got started, mostly because I don't know if you've picked this up. I know Doug Carla, he knows me pretty well, knows me. I'm a stubborn individual. I'm petty as they come. And I'm not going to apologize. That's who I happen to be. But when I got into the Scott Fishbowl for the first time in SFB 6 or 7, I came in as a fan. And I use that term loosely because I got in there and I got in mingling with some people who've been writing for a while or were affiliated with some sites. And so, of course, being the strategic person I am, I go back and read some of their work to see what kind of hints they're going to be, what kind of players they like, this and that. And I'm sitting there, and with all due respect to people, I'm like, I can do this. I've been doing this. I've been playing fantasy football for 20 years already. I can do this. I can do what they're doing. Now, I ain't a good writer. I write like I talk, and it drives me nuts when I do some writing. But I get into there, and I'm like, you know what? Me and my buddy, we've been talking about this for a while. We've been talking about starting our own website. We've been starting talking about this. I said, you know what? It's time to crap or get off the pod at this point. So at ripe old age of 30 plus years old, I won't quite go to what it actually was. I started to learn how to run a computer. So we built this website from scratch. And about halfway through that SFB 7, I think it was, I call up Scott Fish again. I go, Scott, I'm not a fan anymore. Can I put that on my website? He goes, absolutely. So that's when I transitioned from fan to officially a fantasy content creator to a degree. And my wife's like, you're doing and Wendi Carla, you guys have been doing this now for a little while. You started off as fans, and then just into the show, and then all of a sudden starts snowballing, and now you're committed. You're doing radio, you're doing magazines, you're doing podcasts, and there's like one after the other and after the other. And then you're going to work for your 8-9 hours per day, and then you're driving kids around to sports. You're coaching kids at sports. I basically have a 26-hour day that I basically operate off of, and none of that time is really spent sleeping.
That's amazing. I can't. Matt, I want to talk a little bit about the mustache. Okay.
Absolutely.
You have to.
So in my country, we say a mustache on which the eagle stands. It indicates of, strengths and like sickness and strengths. So for a man with a mustache in my country, it's a masculine trait. It's a luxury for the bearer. When someone like in my country have a mustache, it's like a position of honesty, and he must fulfill his promises no matter what they say. What's the mustache for you?
Well, for one, you can put about 2 or 3 eagles on this bad boy, and they can sit there and roost for a while. 2, it's kind of hiding something. I'll be honest. I don't have a top lip. I really don't have a top lip. So that's why the mustache happens to be there for the most part. But, it's just been one of those things. It's just, I grew it. It stuck. And then we went to Canton the one year for the expo. And that is the first thing people pointed out. That's how they recognized me from whatever. It wasn't any of my fantasy advice. It was the mustache. And at that point, I was like, sorry, the mustache has got to stay now. It's part of who I am. It's what I do. So.
Oh, that's so funny.
And then I don't know if you guys have caught Monsters Inc. University, but there's that purple thing. They basically took my mustache, colored it purple, and gave it eyes and let it walk around.
I see.
You should get some royalties from that, Matt.
I can't. Oh my God, yes. I can see that, Matt.
So funny. Well, thank you for that. You know what? My husband has, he's got one that kind of goes down, and we were at a haunted house or something. And I swear to God, like 5 people came up to him and was like, man, that is a badass mustache. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, so I like it. I like it a lot. So Matt, I want to know, I am intrigued with hockey. I am a hockey fan. And I did see somebody in the chat asked if if the Oilers were going to win it this year. What do you feel about that? Is that your team? Who's your team?
So my father, he is a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and I have what you call oppositional defiance disorder. I don't really get along with authority type figures. So when my dad became a Leafs fan, I naturally gravitated towards the Montreal Canadiens. So I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan because he was a Leafs fan. That's really how that started.
Okay,
now,
that's fair enough.
As far as my allegiance here to the Stanley Cup here, I would love a Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup and bring it back for the first time since 1993 when my Montreal Canadiens did so. However, I kind of don't want anyone else to do it until Montreal does it, if you know what I'm saying. So it's kind of one of those catch-22. Yeah, we would like a Canadian team to win it, but I want my Canadian team to win it. And on the flip side, years ago when I was trying to work, so I'm a Zamboni driver by trade. I make
I know. I need to know about this.
So back, I'm trying to think here how long ago it was. I've got the photos back here, but in Calgary, we had the Heritage Classic, which is the same as the outdoor game as Montreal versus Calgary. And I was part of the NHL ice crew that installed that ice surface for that particular game. They actually called me up to be the Zamboni driver for that game. We had some certain conditions there. It was about minus 40 with the wind and chill and the kind of coming over the stadium. So it was not a very pleasant experience as far as weather is concerned. But yeah, that's kind of what I've done. And from that experience, I actually applied for a job with the Florida Panthers just to see if they would accept me. And I actually had some job interviews and some contract conversations with the Florida Panthers organization to run their practice facility. So I guess my tie to the Stanley Cup playoffs is I'm kind of leaning towards the Florida Panthers because that's kind of I've had some talks. I have a little connection there with them.
Yeah, you know what? I did watch a little bit of the game last night. I think I told you before the show I'm a Blackhawks fan, and it's ugly right now. Connor Bedard's probably like our only bright light, in my opinion.
Well,
but
yeah, Connor Bedard, he's fantastic. He played his junior hockey here up in Regina, so I was just kind of down the highway. His cousin is supposed to be as good, if not better, who happens to be playing his junior hockey right here in Medicine Hat. So I get a good chance to watch Gavin McKenna every single day of the week there here in Medicine Hat playing his junior hockey. The kid's got skill, man. He's right up there with Connor Bedard. I would be surprised if he ends up being a better prospect than Bedard, and that's saying something because Connor.
They don't come along like that very often. So I'm glad that we have him. I just hope that we can build around him, but it's not going very well. So how old are your kids that play hockey then? Because you coach them, right?
Yeah. So my 3 youngest have played hockey. So my oldest daughter, she is turning 16 here in August. She plays U18 hockey.
Cool.
We're trying to figure out where we're going with this whole situation here with her hockey right now. Last year she played with the boys, was second in the league in penalty minutes and second on her team in scoring. So she's got a little bit of that power forward type feel to her. She went to a college ID camp and was probably one of the top players there at 15 years old, competing against college girls. Now, college hockey here is not like college hockey down there. There's different levels of the college. So it's quite the difference there, but that's kind of where she's kind of looking at right now. And then my oldest son there, he's kind of transitioned towards football and basketball, kind of moved away from hockey. He was a goalie, but his younger brother decided he wanted to be a goalie. And we're like, you got the goalie. We've already got all the goalie pads and stuff. So, yeah, why not? So he's a goalie, and he's playing U11 hockey right now. So he's just about to turn 10 here in July, I believe. So we are getting set for another hockey season with at least 2 kids playing hockey. And in here, there's a lot of travel. I mean, our closest games when we travel for our league are probably about 2 hours away.
Whoa. Yeah, that's crazy. So your actual full-time job is a Zamboni driver? Am I getting this correct?
It was. Now I oversee all the Zamboni drivers. I've kind of moved up in the progression of things there. So I will make sure the building's running properly, make sure the plant's running properly, make sure the Zamboni's running properly. That's now kind of my job, moved into kind of a management type role. But every once in a while, I still get on the machine to make sure I can still do it. And you know what? It's just like riding a bike. I mean, basically, it's like NASCAR on ice, except you're going the opposite direction.
Hey, Iggy drives the Zamboni too. Iggy with the TSA does the Zamboni. I always wanted to do that.
So, Matt, how has being a member of the FSWA influenced your career in fantasy sports?
It really challenges me because anyone who knows me knows I hate losing, probably more than I like winning. And with the FSWA, they've always got those awards, and I always strive to be nominated. I haven't got that nomination yet, but I mean, like this Game Changers, the Behind the Grind podcast is something I'm very proud of. The stories it tells. And the good thing about this, yes, it's got that fantasy feel like this. We're talking to fantasy analysts, but it's got that staying power. If you do a show with a special guest, you're talking fantasy football, that show is outdated a week after you record it, essentially. With these shows, they are forever in the archives. They're forever telling a story. I mean, we had Mike Tagliere on the show, and that's a story that's going to be there forever, right? No matter what happens, it's going to be there forever. So I love that. And I think there's the Pioneers episodes there. Will run way back even before I started doing something like that. So these are my favorite type shows because they tell a story, and I've always been fascinated with storytelling. Now, I've also written an article recently about my involvement in fantasy sports and whatnot, which I'm kind of on the fence about releasing. It's kind of got a personal feel to it. So I've been kind of going back and forth on whether or not I want to release it, if I should release it, if it's good for fantasy, if it's not good for fantasy. So we talked about a little bit of that imposter syndrome, and you always feel, is what you're doing good enough? Are you good enough to be doing what you're doing? And this is one of those articles where I like it. I'm proud of it. It's telling my story. It's telling fantasy football, but I don't know if I want to share it yet. You know, it's kind of one of those things, like I'm a pretty open book. So if I'm holding back on something, that probably means it's kind of like, oh, I don't know. How is it going to be perceived here? I know I said don't give a dang what people think, but I kind of give a dang what people think here when it comes to this article.
I know.
Well, if you want Carla to proofread it, you know, she is really good at that stuff, Matt. She'll tell you.
Well, I got Grammarly, and Grammarly basically told me, you better redo it. So
you have that course too, so you can do that.
I basically think Grammarly gave up on me after the first 3 or 4 articles I had run through there.
You have your friend Doug Orth. He can help you with that. You know that. So talking about your shows, I know that with your shows you have something special all the time. We were talking last time when we went to the expo that at your shows you do something special, like you do you put some stuff like I don't know, pie or something like that on the show, and you do something extra. So care to share a little bit about what you do with your shows?
Well, anyone who knows me knows I have very little shame. I really don't have any shame, and I'll do anything for a laugh every once in a while. So we've raised money on the show before for No Kid Hungry, me and Chase Vernon there, where we took turns waxing our chests live on the show. He went and got his professionally done. My wife and child decided to do the strips on me. By the way, professional is definitely the way to go. We went through a whole box of wax strips, just tearing and tearing and tearing. It's in there. It's in the archives. It's not going anywhere. We've done these. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Kenny versus Spenny, but that's kind of where we kind of went with some of these things here. We're like, the loser's got to do something. We won't call it incriminating because we don't want incriminating evidence on video and whatnot. So we kind of brought it down a notch. So I think we did the Rocky thing, and Calvin, the shoemaker, he had to drink some eggs, raw eggs, live on the show. I had to eat dog food on the show because I was a dog, because I picked the wrong dog on our one-on-one bet. The Big Mac smoothie was probably the worst. I took a Big Mac, I took a fruit smoothie, I put it in the blender, I blended it up, and I tried to drink it. Now, the problem is we talk about how majestic this mustache happens to be. It was great for when COVID was a thing, because I could not get the COVID virus because everything got stuck in the mustache. Well, the sesame seeds from that Big Mac smoothie would get stuck in the mustache. And I was thinking, this is not that big of a deal. I'm going to open up my throat hole. I'm going to pour this down. It's going to go right through the throat and right into the belly. No harm, no foul. Well, the mustache stopped like half of it from going in my mouth. So now it's like all over and only part of it's seeping in. You're getting the taste. You couldn't just chug it because it was getting stuck everywhere. And I was dry heaving on the show. Calvin's laughing his butt off the whole time. Like I'm like gagging. Oh, so yeah, we've done some things like that on the show for gags for a little bit of a good time because I think it likes to open things up a little bit, and the people can see that you're really people, really.
I agree with that, and I know that you had a naked picture as well somewhere.
What?
Yeah. So, well, another bet I lost was my daughter. I do my makeup one show, but that's a different thing altogether. So there's where she's doing my makeup. But here in Canada, everyone was complaining about it being cold down in the States. I think it was about 35 degrees below zero here Celsius, which is probably about 28 American there in Fahrenheit. And I basically put on my skimpy bathing suit, ran out, and I derobed in my front yard there. And my neighbors were all watching, and I just jumped in the snow pile and started swimming. It wasn't naked. It's in public. I got to keep it PG-13, okay?
Yes.
But yeah, it was down to basically nothing. Oh yeah, the neighbors must think I'm weird because I've done some photo shoots in the front yard that are probably controversial at best.
I want to be your neighbor.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure they go to. I think they sleep really well at night. They're probably more worried about what I'm going to do next. Like the one time I wanted to get my membership into Bill's Mafia, I literally jumped off my truck, threw a table as my video for Bill's Mafia to accept me one year for the playoffs.
Did you get in?
I don't know if they accepted me or not, but it was a nice little tuck and roll. The vertical was at least I got like this high off my truck, so it was more of a fall than it was a jump.
You stuck the landing.
Oh, I stuck it. I stuck it real good. Like there's like a divot from where I hit.
Okay, so with the Viper network and stuff, I know I played in their Viper tournament last year, right? You do that?
Yes, we do. We've done 2 tournaments every year. We do the playoff one, which is kind of where the whole thing started. Was the playoff charity type league, which is that belt there over my shoulder. I finally won my own tournament after 5 years, so kudos. But you start a player twice the entire for the regular season. It was twice for their entire regular season. For the playoffs is one time. Use them, they're done, or you lose them type situation. So it's really good. And we gave back. I think this year we did for Amel. We raised a good ton of money there and Bob Harris was able to get that to Amel for his situation that was going on there. So it was good to see that money go to good use again. Like we do the donations, but it's like no kid hungry. We don't really get to see where that money ultimately goes. So we were able to give it to someone in our own community. It just hits a little different when you can do that because you know who it's going to. And I said this year felt a little bit, it's had a little special feel to it more so than the other years.
You know, I'm almost positive that I think I played you in the final, didn't I? I think I don't know if that was the final.
No, I don't know, a different league there because ours is kind of like a best ball type thing where it's your total score throughout the year.
I played in the one that you got to use the player twice and then that was it. I know Dave, so and that was a lot of fun. Whatever league that was a lot of fun.
It really is. I mean, it's more like of a DFS type thing. You're setting a new lineup every single week, but you can only use the player twice or one time when it comes to playoffs. So there's got a little bit of strategy that kind of plays into it. So I mean, I really like it. It's a little bit different. I mean, there's so many different variations now of how you want to run a fantasy league. I just released a dynasty trade chart. I'm kind of working on it for Rotoballer to kind of put it into an article. But it's funny because you can put all these valuations on players, except every league, it's its own living environment. And every manager, you can never take the human element out of the game because we all have our guys that we have a little bit of higher value on than someone else. So you're never going to get the true value from a trade calculator or a trade chart, but at least it gives you a template to kind of work with.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And are you going to do that this year too?
I was kind of on the fence there. Usually I decide right around the time of the King's Classic if I'm going to do it, depending on what kind of interest we get from that whole situation there. If there's
I'm interested. Okay, Matt, I'm interested.
Well, we might have to run it back here again in the regular season because it really is it's a lot of work at the top, because I do reach out to a lot of our industry leaders there, fantasy guys, fantasy points, rotoballer, get some gifts and stuff like that. And Trophy Smack's been generous enough to help us with the belts a lot of the time too. So a lot of reaching out to see what kind of stuff we can bring in to entice people to do the charity type aspects. Yeah, it's nice to do the charity thing and everyone feels good about donating, but everyone likes to win a little something too on the side. Bob Long, we mentioned him at the expo. He's always been great when it comes to consistency guides. So pretty much anytime you signed up for one of my charity leagues, you're getting a consistency guide just for signing up. So you give your $20 donation, you've been getting a consistency guide each and every year, which basically it breaks you even on that. So you feel like you get something and you're giving something all the same.
Yeah. Oh, I feel I'm winning when I do that. If I'm donating and getting that, and you're just doing a good thing. So Dave Cruz, we have to give out a shout out to Dave Cruz, because he's the one that got me in the Viper, and most of my other charity leagues. I'm a sucker for the charity leagues. I am. That's just what I like to do. So count us in. I'm speaking on behalf of Dave Cruz. We are in.
Dave's been a great support of mine here in the Vipers since day one. I see him retweeting everything, and it's funny because I see everyone who likes a tweet, retweets it. It means a lot. I might not get the 30,000 retweets or likes or whatnot, but every single one I am appreciative, because I look back and I'm like, okay, someone's looking at what we're doing. Someone's seeing the work that's going in. So it means a little bit. It's a little special when you see something like that every time.
Yep.
And Dave's been one of those guys from day one that retweets and likes. And Zach Berger, he's another one of those guys that every single time I put something out there, he's all over it.
Yep.
So talking about Vipercast, Matt, can you tell us a little bit about the chemistry between you and your co-hosts, Calvin Shoemake, Major Caldwell, and Tara Roberts, and how it contributes to the show's success?
Oh, man, we have a lot of fun. So when we put the show together originally, whether it's in season or out of season, the one thing we've always wanted to do is have it so that it's like a group of friends talking fantasy football, because I think it hits different that way. And because when you go out to the bar or out for coffee, you're talking fantasy football, that's what we want this conversation to be. You're going to butt heads. You're going to bust each other a little bit here and there. Me and Calvin, we did a really good job of that. Unfortunately, he's got some other commitments now where he hasn't done the show for a couple of years now. He went to DLF for a bit, and then some other things have kind of come up in his life. Hopefully I've been frozen here, but there we go. I thought my camera froze on me. You don't want this face frozen too long, or else it's going to really hurt your views and whatnot. But when we look at Major and me are like one and the same. We're both ultimately the dad type individual. I mean, he buttons up all his collars. He'll put his dad hat on. And yes, there is a dad hat. It's the one with the little strap in the back that you kind of tighten up like a ratchet strap. And that's what Major got. So we go back and forth, and I know I can give it to him. He can give it to me. And Tara's kind of the one that kind of brings us all back together, right?
I love her.
Both of us will take a show completely off the rail, and she'll bring us back in. And she'll put us both in line too. She'll straighten us both out pretty darn quick. So she's got she'll be talking on some. It'll be like, that's the look of a mother right there. You're like, Kate, no, on to the next one. So when you kind of push it, when you can't push it. And we have a lot of fun. For people who've never met, me and Major, we met a couple of years ago at the expo, but we've never met in person. It was when we were looking at doing this, Calvin and I were trying to figure out, we need some more people in this show. And I can't remember what the old chat used to be. Maybe you guys are familiar with it. There was a chat out there that was not a video chat. It was kind of big there for a little while. We kind of right around the same time Twitter was, but I can't remember what it was exactly. Some people maybe in the chat room can figure it out, but that's where I met Major, and that's where Major introduced us to Tara and that kind of whole thing, because none of them were doing this. It was just me and Calvin doing our thing, and then I heard them in a hangout. Yeah, that might be what it's called. Hangout sounds all right. Thanks, JC. And that's what it was. So we didn't see each other. We didn't know each other, but we could hear each other talking sports. I'm like, you know what? I want that person, and I want that person, and we're going to do a show. So we got Major, we got Tara together, we got him on a show, and it was like instant. It was like, okay, this is going to work. This is good chemistry right here. So that's kind of where that all kind of broke down as far as how that show picked up. It actually took it to that next level, because with me and Kevin and Jeff Mueller there, it was pretty low budgeted. I mean, we didn't have the StreamYard thing. We still had the StreamYard duck in the top corner there. We weren't paying for it. We didn't have graphics yet, so it looks bad. Like if you look at some of those first few episodes, it was bad. But at the same point, having Tara and Major, it actually elevated the entire show and brought it to a new level, and that's kind of where we're at right now. So I'm very proud of being able to call both Major and Tara my friends and my co-hosts on the show each and every week.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How do you decide on the topic of each episode?
Oh, you know what? That's usually decided right before the episode. There's not
Really?
a whole lot of it's and that's the beauty of having both Major and Tara. They're both very good at adjusting on the fly. We all can improvise very well when it comes to the shows all said and done. I try to have a show sheet out probably a couple days in advance on how we want to talk, how we want to go with it. And I've got hundreds of show sheets now where it's more of a copy and paste and kind of make some adjustments there, like behind the grind. When we do that, I've got my list of questions that I transfer over each and every week. That I pull 3 or 4 of them out. And I put 3 or 4 that have a very personal touch to the guest. And that's how that kind of goes, which is basically like low-key internet stalking your guest a little bit, just to have a little bit of something. I might slide in some of their friends' DMs, get a little bit of juicy information, and then that's kind of how that's put out there. But each and every week during the show, it's trying to find those hot topics, right? What everyone wants to talk about, finding out what's hitting, what's missing, and that's how we roll.
That's cool.
Yep. Well, I had seen that in your bio that you've sat down with some of the best fantasy minds. Like who do you consider one of the best fantasy minds, or some of the best fantasy minds out there?
Oh, there are so many people that I respect in the industry. Some that had that big name attached to them. The Matthew Berries was a fantastic episode. Mike Tagliari, he comes to mind just because how brilliant he is, and the work that he kind of put out there way back when. D Brown, man, I love him. I love we match energy. Jeff Mans, me, guys with the same type of energy. We could have a great show where it's basically like we're yelling at each other the entire time.
I can see that.
And the louder I get, the quicker I talk, the quicker my hands move. So it's like a ninja thing going on there on the whole entire show. Eventually, it's just slapping hands and going on that whole thing there. I'm thinking like Adam Sandler, slap hands. Yeah. And that's basically how the talk show basically goes each and every week from there. But every time, I mean, I really love getting into the player interviews. Brian McFadden, you mentioned having Stefania Bell's number kind of hidden in your cell phone and whatnot. Great show. I was able to get Jamie Eisenberg there. He kind of introduced me to Brian McFadden there from CBS. We had him on the show. We kind of talked some of the stories that you hear. It's just different because everyone's got those different life experiences. So I love to pull these stories out and have that experience along with our guests and kind of try and put myself in their shoes when certain things have happened. So Brian McFadden, he was fantastic. I just recorded with Matt Miller there last night. That show comes out next week sometime. I try to do a show and then record it and then put it out the next week because I never know where I'm going to be each and every single week. So with my schedule, I don't know. So I try and record as many episodes as I can. I kind of drop them pre-recorded style. But it's just Stefania Bell, Liz Loza, Lisa Ann, great interviews, sitting down with each and every one of them. I mean, you name it, they've been on the show at some point. So I'm still going after some players. I'm still going after some other big names there around our fantasy football field. But so many great conversations that we've had with so many great people.
Well, and that kind of leads me around to the expo, because at the expo, everyone is accessible. All of those people that you just named that are at the expo, if they're at the expo, you go up and talk to them. They're normal people, like, and you had mentioned before about being just a fan, going to the expo or to the Scott Fish Bowl. And I was just a fan when I went to the expo last year. But everyone was so cool. I mean, it was just one of the best experiences, but it goes so fast. It's like, I was like mentioning, it's like my wedding. Like, I don't remember shit about my wedding. It just goes fast, and I don't remember shit about the expo last year, hardly, except my bestie. I do remember being able to meet my bestie. That was very important. But so this year is going to be a completely different experience because I get to go now and more people are going to know who I am. Not that I'm anybody important, but I've made I've made bonds with these people, and so it's going to be so great. All our people in the chat that I haven't got to meet yet, and but I just think that's so cool that you've been able to have this journey, and I know you said that we met at the expo, and I felt like a real jerk because I'm like, I met so many people, I felt bad. I'm like, so you know what? I know you don't drink, but we are gonna get together, and I'm gonna buy you a bottle of water. I don't care, Matt.
So, hey, sounds good with me. My old man always said anything free is worth saving up for, so I look forward to that right now. I just wish I would have got Doug off his wallet, maybe paid for my meal there last year. But hey, we're working on that too.
He'll be there this year.
The Expo is such a beautiful thing. I know Bob puts a lot into it. Last year, first time ever, I was on a panel talking redraft. That just hits a little bit different, being able to be on that panel, kind of on that pedestal a little bit. I've been fortunate to be part of the King's Classic, I think, for 5 years, going to the Expo now for 4 years, doing some of it online as part of the international division. Bob's brought me up a few times to play with the other guys there as well. First year ever, COVID, what a rush that was, trying to get through the airports and whatnot. It basically turned like the McAllisters there after they lost their kid, trying to go from airport to airport. One flight was canceled. I had to take a detour from like Cleveland to Washington to Montreal to Toronto to Calgary. Meanwhile, my flight from Cleveland to Toronto to Calgary was still on the same time frame. So it was just a nightmare. And then I don't know if you guys know this, but during COVID, you had to take a test as soon as you landed in the other country. And that test was only good for so long. And you needed that result within that period of time to get back across the border again. So I was actually just through the gate and my test had expired. Luckily, they counted me as through the gate when it expired. So I was good on that. But it
was the mustache. If you wouldn't have had that mustache, your ass had been going back and getting another test.
And the thing is, at the airport, it was like $150 for that test. So that was an extra fee that you had to pay up there. But I love it because this year now we're coming. Every year I try to mix it up a little bit. So this year we're actually flying into Pittsburgh. You've seen Jameson here. He kind of touched down in the show. Jameson's got us going to the PNC ballpark in Pittsburgh. It's my first ever Major League Baseball game on Dollar Dog Night. Jameson knows me well. We're going on Dollar Dog Night. JJ, Jody, Jameson, and just me, I guess. There's the 4 J's.
Sounds like a blast.
So we're looking forward to that. Then we're going to come up to Cleveland or Canton one day earlier rather than coming in on the Friday. I'm going to show up on the Thursday, so that's going to be a little bit different for me.
So Greg, he was saying you don't remember him. You remember when we were waiting for Doug and he wanted to take our picture?
Yep.
Last year. So yeah, Greg, we remember you. We were taking pictures together.
I got the pictures. They're on my phone still.
I know, right? So
you got that little Canadian accent. I love that.
I know, right?
That's amazing. On my phone still.
Well, it's funny because I even write with that accent. So every once in a while, when I say when there is there, I'll actually type in dare, where it'll be like DER or something like that. It messes with the editors. It's horrible. I'm horrible.
So what is it behind the mic at SiriusXM, and how does it compare to other media you've worked with?
Well, luckily, I've been fortunate enough. So my first time on the mic, it was a little unnerving because I was with Howard Bender, and on that show, it was a phone call in. And I'm a real visual person, so I can look at you guys right now and kind of feed off of you. That's how I can do this, talking this and that. On a phone, you don't get that. So I talk fast, but I felt the nervous energy, and it felt like I was talking even like I went back and I listened to the show and everything was fine, but it felt like I was kind of talking like this. I thought my heart was going to explode. I felt like that was kind of going on right there like that, but it turned out everything was fine, and I was kind of overselling it. But I mean, you talk about Bob Harris. I owe everything I've ever done and everything I ever will do in this industry because of Bob Harris's kindness, taking me in under his wing, getting me on XM radio as often as I have. I mean, it's a blessing every time. Getting me in on those Pro Forecast magazines, the Football Diehards magazine was out there. If it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't be doing as much as what I am doing as far as that's concerned. And Bob Lung, of course, who got me into the King's Classic, which, as you know, it's a nice little feather in your hat to be part of the Queen's Classic, to be part of the King's Classic, amongst some of the most brilliant minds in the fantasy industry.
I know that you're trying to put yourself out there as much as you can. and like you are smart, you know what you're doing, and you're still in an industry that you're not being looked at as you're supposed to be looked at. So what are you trying to do to be out there more at that point?
That is a very good question. I just keep trying to be me, and maybe that's the definition of being an idiot, continuing to do the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. I mean, I'm still doing the same thing over and over again, and maybe the numbers aren't quite there. Maybe the podcast views aren't quite there. Maybe the Twitter followers or whatever you want to call it isn't there. But you have to look inside the numbers. Like in fantasy football, the numbers only tell a small part of the story. And for me, that smallest part of the story is look at who is following you. Look at your DMs. Who have you been DMing? Who have you been having these side conversations with? How are those relationships going? And I look at my DMs, and I'll show my friends my phone from every once in a while, and they'll look at some of the phone numbers in my phone. They'll look at some of the DM conversations and like, what? How do you know them? How do you know them? And that's when you know maybe you don't have 15, 20,000 Twitter followers, but you have all the people who have 15, 20,000 Twitter followers following you.
Yep.
So it's quality over quantity. And for me, I know I'm a 40-plus-year-old man in the fantasy football industry. There's a few of us out there. I mean, I pretty much fit the very definition of what is currently out there for the most part. I know I'm probably not going to advance too much further on in this whole thing, and that's fine. So for me, it's more about elevating others around me, giving them an opportunity. I mean, I know I have my personal job right now. I got 15 years till retirement with a full pension. That is priority one. After that, maybe then I get into radio and we'll start to talk. I can't make that full move into the unknown. You watch everything that's going on, and we see these layoffs in these major companies, ESPN, and laying off employees, and you're like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be getting into this. I like my job security. I like everything that I kind of going on right now. So I can't take that plunge, but I do have a retirement plan that does involve hopefully working in radio, doing what I'm doing, just enough to kind of balance out that pension a little bit. So that's kind of what the plan is there. And right now it's still about those networking. For me, relationships are probably the most important thing, the biggest currency I think you can have when it comes to fantasy sports. And those relationships that I have right now, I wouldn't trade them in for a full-time job in the industry right now because I just value them so much.
I agree. Yeah. Thank you for that, Matt. I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem.
We had talked about the Scott Fish Bowl a little bit, and I 2 years ago was the first time I got in, and Scott just tweeted the other day about women. You know, he needed more women, and that's how I got in. And the funny thing is we have a Women of Fantasy Football chat that is called Unwind that Rachel put together, and everybody started commenting in there. That's how I got in. That's how I got in. That's how I got in. So when you have the draft where you're at, do you go to a live draft?
I don't do very many live drafts outside of the Kings Classic now. We had a few, and in my article, I kind of mentioned why I went away from the live draft way back when. This article that comes up potentially in July, August. I was kind of going to hopefully to release it around July when I thought the mental health pod was going to be, but now that mental health pod has moved to July 17th-ish, which comes after the Expo, so I kind of puts the whole thing into it. I used to do a lot more live drafts, but there's a lot more going on during a live draft, if you know what I mean. So a lot, especially with my high school buddies and stuff like that, who knows where that's going to end up. But the Kings Classic is basically my last in-person live draft, and it really is the best. Live drafts are the way to go.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And it's last year I did the live draft in Chicago, and you walk in there and I didn't know. I knew John McGlynn, thank God. I knew a couple people, and then Hoove drove down, and it's like I started seeing, oh, I do know this person. Oh, I do know this person. So this year or last year we had two women. It was me and Bethany Peters, and we were the only two women. This year we have, I want to say at least 5 or 6, and I think there's 3 or 4 in our division. So are you seeing a little bit more women being involved?
Absolutely. And like I said, every week when I do my show, I see one of the most brilliant minds in the fantasy industry take to the mic every single time. Like what Tara has done, Fantasy Pros, Fantasy Alarm, anything with the word fantasy in it, she's doing it. And it should be something for women out there everywhere, seeing that these doors are getting opened up by some of these brilliant women. The foundation that Stefania Bell, Liz Loza, they set that out there. They put that into motion years and years and years ago. And now it's starting to come to fruition here because of the next generation of these brilliant minds. And they're everywhere. You look, Casey does a lot of good work there. The Get Real podcast absolutely crushes it each and every week that she takes the mic too. So you're seeing more women getting involved. And I think it's great for the fantasy industry. Anytime you can add a new voice, it's only going to make the overall product better. And I know for a fact I'm not always right. And I also know for a fact that even just because something works for me doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. So the more people you have challenging everything, the better the whole product is going to be. Look at where we've gone from film to analytics and now the challenge there. And now you got the different minds and how different people think the game differently. You think it different than I do. I think it different than Doug. Like everyone thinks the game differently, and that only makes it better. So I'm looking across my social medias and I see so many more women in position here in content creation, creating fantastic material each and every week. And like I said, I'm the third smartest person on my own show half the time. So, I mean, I totally get it.
So, Matt, you have an extensive experience and your publications in various fantasy football magazines. So how do you see the role of print and digital publications evolving in the fantasy football industry?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I would love print to continue on because I still love to go to a draft. I remember going to these live drafts. I love going with a magazine.
Magazine, yes.
I remember going to my local Walmart and my son grabbing the magazine with me in it and the excitement that he had. I mean, it just hits different. And written work, websites, it's less and less now because video is now kind of taking over because people don't have the time to read. I remember growing up, we read the cereal box for fun, for crying out loud. Like, that's what we did. We read 180 calories, 75 grams of cholesterol. That's what we read as children.
And now we have to read it for different reasons.
And now we're sitting on the toilet looking at our cell phones going through Twitter. Well, maybe that's just me, but you know what I'm trying to say. I mean, our attention spans these days are not what they once used to be. We want instant gratification in our content. And with all due respect, I can consume a lot more visually, listening, this and that I can from reading because I don't read very fast. So that's the other part of the whole thing. But it's really sad because I love a magazine. I love having a magazine, and then I love taking it out to the beach. I love sitting out at the lake with my magazine, rolling it up, smacking a fly every once in a while. Dual purposes. It's all about efficiency. And the magazine, I don't know how many more years these magazines can keep doing what they're doing, but I hope they stick around because I just love them. It means it just hits differently having something published in a magazine versus on a website, for me at least. I mean, it just has that, maybe it's a nostalgia type thing. I don't know what it is, but I still remember like scorekeeping fantasy drafts out of a newspaper, for crying out loud. For people who don't know what a newspaper is, it's one of the things that used to come at your door for about 35 cents every day, 7 days a week, every once in a while. And you'd read it when you weren't done reading when you weren't reading the cereal box, you're reading a newspaper. So I want to bring that back. I love that. That's, for me, that's what fantasy football is. So I love that.
Remember, you used to you would open up your magazine, you'd see all the running backs, and as they would go off the live draft board, you'd scratch them off out of the magazine.
Absolutely. And I still do that. Now maybe I'll go print off a cheat sheet off this or cheat sheet off that. 9 times out of 10, it's my cheat sheet I'm printing off anyway. So
you should already know it anyways. You should have it in your head, Matt.
And if I'm wrong, I just blame someone else anyway, so we're all good.
Definitely blame someone else.
That's what everyone does. We do that too, or at least I do. I can't speak for Carla. Carla's a saint. Okay, I am not. But listen, hey, Matt, this has been so much fun. I was nervous for absolutely no reason at all.
I agree.
Thank you so much for coming on. And just in case someone doesn't know where to find you, can you let everybody know where to hook up with you?
Yeah, you can first off find me on the X machine there at Matt Donnelly FF, just so you're not confused. That's fantasy football.
Yes.
That's the first place to find it. If you go on there, if you click on the bio, you can catch me over at Fantasy Points, Rotoballer. I kind of do some stuff in their Discord channels there, do some articles and some video for Rotoballer as well. And then I've got my Patreon out there that really, I think I have one person that contributes to that. So it gets my cup of coffee one cup of coffee every month kind of thing. But you'll find my rankings that are usually there, my Dynasty trade chart, all this other stuff. It's all there. Mostly because when I shut down the website, because no one uses websites. The traffic's not quite there. We just transferred everything to, guess what? The YouTube, which you can also go to the Vipers Network there on YouTube and find basically everything, including the Behind the Grind series, where your favorite analysts talk about their journey in professional sports or fantasy sports or the sports media. We have a little bit of everything going on there.
I love it. Yep, I love it. Thank you so much. We also want to express our gratitude to all of our viewers. You guys are so great. Yeah, the chat was hopping tonight. They loved you, Matt. Greg was kind of throwing in a few things there that we didn't get to see, but I know he is a big fan of yours. So thank you so much to the Sports Affiliation for providing us with this platform so we can come and talk to you guys every week. This is, it's really a highlight of my week. So a special thanks to my best friend, JC, for doing all the behind the scenes work, making it look easy for us. So we appreciate that. Carla, I love you. I will see you. I mean, we'll be talking anyways, but we'll see everybody on July 17th. Have a good evening and good health. Thank you.
Who will have in July 17th?
Oh my gosh. I don't even know. Tell us.
Oh, we're going to have Brian Drake.
There you go. That was on me. I'm sorry, Brian Drake.
Keep in mind, you guys. We're having Brian.
You guys have to come back. Did you hear that? Brian Drake. So we will see you on the 17th.
And Brian may have the best voice in all of radio himself, so you don't want to miss that.
All right. Thanks again, Matt. Good night, everybody.